All right. Well, thanks for coming out this morning, folks. I wanted to bring you together today to hear from yet another example of the need for action on rare disease treatment here in the province of Ontario. Since getting elected in 2011, I've seen countless patient groups forced to come here cap in hand to make their plea to the government for life-saving and life-transforming treatment. You may remember patients suffering from rare diseases like AHAS, PKU, and IPF having to make a similar stand here at Queen's Park to tell their stories. Today we have two women, Erica Crawford and Brooklyn Mills, suffering from the impacts of EDS, a disease that affects the connective tissue providing support to many body parts, leading to a long list of painful and debilitating problems. I'll let these ladies and their parents tell you how EDS has affected them and driven them to start a petition calling for government to step up and provide support. As you will hear, EDS sufferers, like many with a rare disease, are caught in a bizarre catch-22 where they can't get treatment in this province while the ministry fails to cover treatment out of the province. In the case of Brooklyn, following years of searching for treatment, Brooklyn's mother, Rebecca, took action by starting up the ILC Foundation with her friend Sandy to improve the lives of children living with chronic pain. In the case of the Crawfords, after 5 years of waiting for government support and having to remortgage and max out line of credits to afford 2 surgeries with a Maryland neurologist for their now 19-year-old daughter Erica, Darren and Michelle Crawford started up petitions calling for government action, which you will see here on my left. To this point, the Crawfords have garnered over 8,000 signatures on 2 separate petitions calling for government to provide the names of Ontario neurosurgeons who have experience with EDS patients and will perform the necessary surgeries, or provide full funding for out-of-country treatment, thereby meeting the Canada Health Act's requirements to afford equal access to medical treatment for patients regardless of their ability to pay for out-of-country services. I look forward to calling for that support in the House today and will be tabling the petition for the response by the Minister at 3 o'clock. And in the weeks to come, I look forward to providing more action steps on behalf of all of those with a rare disease as I look to build on the motion I tabled at the end of the last session, calling on the funding to treat rare diseases here in the province of Ontario. With that, I'll hand it over to Darren, Erica, Brooklyn, and Rebecca, who will remind you in a very clear terms why they are here today.
Our family started this petition to the Minister of Health and Ontario government to provide funding for the necessary out-of-country treatments for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome patients, because we have found that doctors in Ontario have little to no experience with EDS. We have gathered more than 8,000 signatures in support of the petition with the help of family and friends. Individuals with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome have genetic defect in their connective tissue, the tissue that provides support to many body parts such as skin, muscles, and ligaments. EDS victims suffer severe dislocations, chronic pain, blackouts, nausea, migraines, lost vision, tremors, bowel, bladder issues, heart problems, mobility issues, digestive disorders, severe fatigue, and very poor quality of life. Our daughter Erica has been very sick for the last 5 years. She has seen more than 35 specialists, hundreds of days in hospital, countless ER visits, yet we have not met one doctor with experience with EDS in Ontario. I've lost track of how many times our daughter has been labeled as psychosomatic because doctors in Ontario do not have the necessary training or experience to treat this disease. It's bad enough having such a horrible, debilitating disease, but to have doctors tell you have manifested your symptoms in your head is just cruel and inhumane. Healthcare staff have to Google EDS to get any information. It doesn't instill much confidence in getting appropriate care or treatment. Here's an exact quote from Erica's discharge statement from a top neurosurgery hospital in Ontario after she spent 3 weeks in ICU. It's unfortunate with our resources at hand and our specialists here, we've not been able to finalize a satisfactory solution for Mrs. Crawford. She may want to consider to have a second opinion from Dr. Fraser Henderson. If we have doctors here, specifically neurosurgeons, that have experience with EDS patients, then why is a senior physician referring Erica to the EDS neurosurgeon specialist in the United States? Dr. Henderson is the EDS neurosurgeon specialist that has performed over 1,000 of the necessary surgeries with a very high success rate. Why can't the health minister send some physicians to the United States to learn Dr. Henderson's very successful techniques in treating EDS patients and bring that knowledge back to Ontario to help those stricken with this horrible disease so families like ours do not have to become financially ruined for the health care we already paid dearly for? Sorry. As a result of this, we've had to take our daughter to the U.S. for 2 major life-saving surgeries. In the last 3 years, The immense stress, financial hardship our family's endured over the last 5 years has been devastating. Our credit cards, line of credits have been maxed. We just remortgaged our house. I've paid taxes for more than 30 years, and yet I have no choice but to leave the province to get the necessary health care for my daughter needs to have a good quality of life. Isn't everyone entitled to a good quality of life in Canada? Once again, I ask the health minister, please provide the names of Ontario neurosurgeons who have experience with EDS patients and will perform the necessary surgeries with equivalent or identical skills to the EDS neurosurgeon specialists in the United States. Alternatively, for those patients whose treatment is only available in the United States, we ask the province to provide full funding for out-of-country treatment, thereby meeting the Canada Health Act requirement to afford equal access to medical treatment for patients, regardless of their ability to pay for out-of-country service. I'd personally like to thank Michael Ayers for all his support.
My name is Erica Crawford. I became sick over 5 years ago. For roughly 2 years, my family and I searched desperately for some kind of answer or idea to what was going on with me. Multiple specialists and teams of doctors assessed me. I was misdiagnosed several times. When doctors could not figure out what was wrong with me, they jumped to the conclusion that I was mentally ill, that I had some sort of attention disorder, or that I was psychosomatic. Having doctors tell you something that is in your something is in your head when you're suffering so much, there's no words to explain the amount of hopelessness I felt. As I began to deteriorate further, endlessly in unbearable pain, I fell into a deep depression with no help in sight. Finally, after two years, a geneticist diagnosed me with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, an incurable disease that affects your connective tissue that supports more than 80% of your body. I was told to simply put braces all over my dislocated joints, and that there was no cure or treatment for Ehlers-Danlos patients in Canada. I was sent home with no hope for the future. I was absolutely devastated and felt completely disheartened and alone. We had no choice but to travel out of country to get the treatments and surgery that I needed, none of which was covered by OHIP. Before my surgery in the U.S., I was in a wheelchair, partially blinded in my left eye, severe headaches, blackouts, nausea, and many other complications. But after the surgery, I was able to walk again. My vision returned. Headaches, blackouts, and nausea were greatly improved. From this, I was able to complete high school and graduate with honors from college and as a social worker as well, as I would very much like to help and advocate for other children dealing with these devastating diseases. My family and I are constantly told by OHIP that there are doctors in Canada that have the experience to treat and care for EDS patients. I don't want anyone else to suffer like I have. I'm up here pleading, begging, suffering, and fighting for the care and quality of life that I deserve, and also others deserve. I didn't choose this disease, it chose me. I have Ehlers-Danlos, but it doesn't have me.
My name is Brooklyn Mills. I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome more than 6 years ago when I was 16 years old. I am now 22 and have spent almost all of my teenage and young adult years completely debilitated in hospitals, while my friends, peers, and siblings went on and had life experiences I will never know. These years for me were spent in excruciating pain, usually unable to walk or even sit up in my bed. I constantly put my trust in a medical system with the belief that they would eventually do everything they could to help me. I went from hospital to hospital, specialist to specialist, always ending with the same disappointment. Doctors giving up and conceding defeat, usually masked with a diagnosis of a psychosomatic disorder. My family never gave up, but I can honestly say that the struggle for hope would get harder and harder with each failed attempt. One of these extended hospital stays, I had eventually deteriorated to a frail, almost lifeless girl with no use of my extremities, no feeling below my waist, or the ability to sit up without going into seizures. That is when the entire neurology team had a meeting with me and my parents to tell us that there was nothing else that they could do for me, and that we should be discharged from the hospital and possibly seek a physiotherapist, for they were no longer able to help. Not accepting this absolute death sentence, my parents and brothers carried me out of the hospital, placed me on a mattress in the back of our van, drove me 10 hours to Maryland to be treated by a neurosurgeon and his team of specialists, which is Dr. Henderson. Once he saw me, he immediately performed surgery to repair what was found to be a fracture in my spine. I had regained feeling in my legs and was walking within 48 hours of arriving there. None of my care has been covered by our Ontario out-of-country health insurance. I feel betrayed by the Ontario medical system. I feel betrayed by my own country. The only reason I am standing in front of you today is the perseverance of my parents, their willingness to exhaust all their resources to find care, and the compassion and expertise of the medical staff that treated me in the United States. I beg that you reevaluate your policies and procedures for obtaining out-of-country assistance, because no one should have to suffer the way I have. I'm doing this because of a dear friend to me that was diagnosed with EDS. She was 22 years old and she just passed away at the end of May. Because of her, that's why I am trying to push as much as I can so no one else has to suffer the way that we all have.
I have been advocating for many years to the Ontario healthcare system that has continuously failed to meet my daughter's needs. This is largely due to the lack of awareness and education about the disease she lives with. This in turn holds doctors back from being able to provide a treatment or access to care plan. Brooklyn has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS, a multi-system disorder that is difficult to diagnose, treat, and care for. Symptoms can be mild to life-threatening. Unfortunately, in Brooklyn's case, it is the latter. It took 9 years to get a diagnosis. Unfortunately, EDS is poorly understood in Canada, whether for children or adults. For the past 5 years, Brooklyn has received care in the United States, led by one of only a few neurosurgeons who specializes in this disease, and the team of medical professionals that he works with. She has had countless treatments and surgeries in the U.S. None of this has been funded by OHIP or any organization, and has left our family in financial ruins, not to mention the incredible emotional toll and stress we have had to endure. We recently were forced to sell our house to help cover some of the staggering medical bills. The decision to seek help in the U.S. was made after all options were completely lost to us here. There have been a few medical professionals who fought alongside with us. Realizing her care required a team that could treat and understand her complicated care requirements. They shared our pain of realization that her needs could not be met here in Ontario. One doctor in particular was Brooklyn's pediatrician over 6 years ago. She is highly skilled and is the recipient of the Order of Ontario. This is a quote verbatim from the letter she wrote to the Ministry of Health. Dr. Anna Banerjee wrote, "I feel that the healthcare system in Ontario has failed Brooklyn on many levels. She continues to suffer with unbearable pain, is wheelchair-bound, has lost weight and muscle tone, and is unable to go to school. Brooklyn is a very brave and stoic young woman and doesn't complain, but I recognize that her needs were not being met in Ontario and that her condition was becoming life-threatening. I am willing to stand by Brooklyn if the family choose to pursue political, media, or legal course of action on behalf of their daughter, as I feel that she has suffered enough already. This is just one of the many hurdles we have had to overcome. The suffering has been relentless. Lack of knowledge and understanding of the disease has jeopardized my daughter's life, as well as many others. Brooklyn is here with us today because we took her to one of the few doctors who specializes in Chiari malformation, EDS, and related disorders. A pioneer who has dedicated his life to giving back quality of life to his patients. Both sides of our family are more than 6 generations Canadian. I always believed that this is the best country in the world, but the way it has turned my back on my daughter and many other of its citizens who suffer with disease is not only cruel and unethical, it is against everything I thought this country stood for.
With that, we'd be happy to take questions.
Brooklyn, what house are you from? Where do you live? Are you from Toronto?
Oakville.
Where are you from?
I'm from Oakville.
So, what do you want to see going forward? Do you have any more appointments with in the U.S.?
I do. It's never ending. There will always be appointments, and there will always be help needed by that specialist. So far, and I really would like to see action taken towards letting us be taken care of the way we should be without putting our families in complete financial debt.
Where is everyone from? So Oakville and
Brantford.
Brantford? Okay. Where did you guys go to the same place in Maryland?
Yes.
Is this the same guy? So who is this and
Dr.
where is
Henderson.
this?
Dr. Henderson, Dr. Fraser Henderson,
And what hospital?
Dr. Communities Hospital,
Where is that?
Maryland.
Yeah, but that's a big state.
Lanham,
Lanham,
Maryland.
Lanham,
How do you spell that?
Lanham.
Okay. And what's the hospital called again?
Doctors Community Hospital.
Okay, so how did you find this guy?
I found Dr. Henderson through years of searching. Actually, Brooklyn was in the hospital in Toronto for 3 months, and after 3 months' time, they basically told us that they could not identify a specialist in Ontario or Canada, and suggested that we went to the States.
No one had a lead. No one gave you a lead to this guy.
No, I found Dr. Henderson through my own research.
And what hospitals were the girls in here?
Many.
McMaster. If you just about name it.
Every hospital
Hamilton
in
General.
Toronto.
Hamilton, Oakville.
Mount Sinai, Oakville. And
Sick Kids Toronto.
Sick Kids, yes, when they were younger, it was Sick Kids, yeah.
Top hospitals.
Sorry, has anyone in the medical profession or within the ministry, when you applied, have they identified a doctor in this province or even in Canada who can perform the same
No.
kind of surgery that you get in?
And they have tried, and every single time it has ended in devastation. It ended with me almost losing my life several times and having to rush back down to Maryland to fix the surgery that was performed.
Okay.
And the health minister keeps saying that there's doctors exist. And that's why I did this. Is I want these names because they don't exist. Just to say, see, there's doctors here that can do fusions, but there's not doctors here that have experience on EDS patients to do fusions because there's so much complications that are part of this disease. The blood vessels can rupture at any time when they're doing the surgery. There's so much stuff that can happen after post-op after surgery. And if the doctors don't have experience with that, it's a ticking time bomb.
To the both parents, how much have each of you spent?
Well, we're well over 200,000, and the mills are.
We are over $1 million, and we've actually paid over 400,000 of our own funds. And I should note too that surgical intervention is a last resort for these girls who are very severe. When we talk about doctors, the necessary doctors to help these patients, it's a whole myriad of systemic conditions throughout the body. It's not just surgery. I just wanted to add that in there.
Erica, how old are you?
I'm 20 years old.
20. So you said you guys were going fast. I didn't catch it. You're going to college? Or
No, I've actually graduated college with honors for social work.
Okay.
And so she had the first surgery when she was 17. And, you know, for 2.5 years, it gave her a really good quality of life. She finished high school, finished college. I think that's pretty impressive. She did a lot of it from the hospital. I mean, she's a smart girl, and she wants to help, you know, she wants to move on.
Where did you go to college?
Mohawk College in Hamilton.
Brooklyn, how old are you?
I'm 22 years old.
Are you working?
I'm not. I'm unable to. I've had over 40 surgeries, and so I'm very limited in what I can do. I also had my first surgery when I was about 6. I was turning 7. I would have been 17, and so I was unable to finish high school, and it affects the brain and your memory and all sorts of things, so it's been a real struggle trying to get to where I want to be
What do you want to do?
educational-wise. Pardon?
What would you like to do educational-wise?
I wanted to go into criminalistics. Criminalistics.
All right. Are you working, Erica?
No, I'm on no DSP.
With your folks, or?
Yep, my parents.
Do you have a meeting or anything set up with the Minister of Health, or do you want to, have you asked to speak to him? Do you want to speak to him? What's the situation going on there?
I don't know, Mike, what do you, I mean.
Well, Erica and Brooklyn are here today at Queen's Park. They'll be attending question period. Obviously, I'll have an opportunity to ask the minister about this specifically in question period. I encourage the minister to come over and meet both Erica and Brooklyn, and they'll be here after question period as well. So, I think the petition, obviously, Darren has 8,000 signatures. We'll await a response from him as well on that, and we can only hope that they make this a priority.
And have you had any direct contact with Minister Hoskins on this at this point?
Yes, yes, yeah. So I got a letter from, I guess it'd be his assistant, Bev Lyman, and she said, it was going to provide a name to doctors, but that went to our doctor, and we never got names back. So, like I said, it's the problem. They're going to provide a neurosurgeon, but it's going to be a neurosurgeon who doesn't have any experience of the disease. That's the fundamental problem.
There's nobody in Canada that does this, eh?
No, well, just to give you a background, Dr. Henderson has, when we've been down there, he has patients from Egypt, Australia, all over the United States, of course, Canada, England. Like, I can go on all the countries that are there. It's just, he's specialized in this. There's not a lot of people that do it. Manitoba is funding this now, the out-of-country treatments.
And how many people, do you know how many people there are with EDS in Ontario or Canada?
It was thought to be because there's several different types of EDS. It was thought to be 1 in 5,000, but with the most recent studies, it's a lot more than 1 in 5,000. I don't have the exact number.
It's thought to be 1 in 200 for joint hypermobility syndrome, and in the rare forms of the EDS, being vascular, they suspect it's 1 in 30,000.
1 in 200 is not that rare, actually, though.
No, and that's what they're, with all the research that's happening, the rare, even though it will still say 1 in 5,000 has the type 3 hypermobility, you then can have crossovers. So you can have a crossover of vascular and hypermobility type, which puts you in a different category and makes it all the more complicated. However, it's very rare to be diagnosed because the symptoms range from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum, and it's very hard for any kind of physician to think that something that's happening in your ankle can be related to something happening in your brain. And 80% of your body is made up of connective tissue. It's in your organs, it's in your ligaments, it's everywhere. So the very rare thing is to be diagnosed and treated. EDS itself, just the one type, there's no evidence to prove it's 1 in 200, but it is a lot more prevalent than 1 in 5,000, right up to the vascular, which Sandy said was 1 in 30,000.
I was going to ask, is it all just surgery, or are there any drugs for this?
No, it's what these patients need is a multidisciplinary team of specialists. And like I said, surgery is a last resort. A last resort when, you know, my daughter could not walk or sit up without having seizures. She actually has been in 14 medically induced comas from seizures that never stopped. So just learning about what types of treatments might stop these from happening before it gets to a point where surgery does have to happen, because there's a lot of other things, POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is when you stand up, your heart races, your blood pressure drops, these patients pass out. Things like that that are recognized are somewhat treatable with medications. So it's a whole team of people. And surgery is kind of like that last step, that last option. It's not all about the surgeries. Surgery is needed when their lives become endangered. But we totally believe that with a good multidisciplinary team in place, some of these surgeries can actually be prevented by the proper treatment happening.
Plus, if they're diagnosed at the front,
Yes.
the patient isn't left 2 or 3 years and deteriorates so much that the surgery is needed.
Exactly.
So it's usually taking 2 to 3 years to diagnose this. That's the big problem.
In our case, 9. Yeah.
No.
Everybody is working to address that, right?
Yes.
I don't know if there's any other questions than that.
Can I just sneak in one more? So I'm looking at Erica and Brooklyn. I've seen your eyes closed a lot, Erica. Are you feeling lousy today, or
Yeah.
how do you feel today? Tell us how you feel today.
Don't really think that there's like ever a day where I don't feel like crap.
Brooklyn, how are you doing today?
Not
I'm not
very.
trying to make anybody cry. I'm just like.
No,
wanna-
I honestly explain it every morning. I kind of hope that I'm just in a nightmare and waiting to wake up, but you never do. And I honestly can't remember the last time that I ever had a day where I was okay, that the day went fine with no complications.
Thank you.
Thank you.